Greetings, friends, frenemies, and onlookers from afar. This video is going to be about spiritual depression, spiritual enthusiasm, and the transition from one to the other. Spiritual depression. It's a lot in common with normal depression. I would go so far as to say that the two are almost, but not quite, synonymous. Because technical psychiatric depression is at least partially a chemical deal. We're not talking about bipolar. I know a lot of people get caught up on the whole manic depression. That's a whole different shtick. A lot of people who think they're bipolar are not at all. Meet someone who's genuinely bipolar, you see the difference. So we're not talking about manic depression. Mood swings, yeah, to an extent we can be talking about that. I want to focus on what they call major depression. That's something that can happen to someone at any stage of their life, sometimes multiple times throughout their life, and it's triggered by something external. Can go on for a couple of weeks, can go on for months, can go on for years, but one way or another it is a response to external stressors. It can be a response to a divorce, can be a response to the death of a loved one. It can be a response to the loss of a career. It can be a response to all kinds of things. And that's where we see the link to this spiritual depression, because spiritual depressions are often caused by external factors, or rather triggered by external factors. The soul has peaks and valleys. Your energy has natural peaks and valleys. There are times of expansion, there are times of contraction. And yet, when the time of contraction, when you get locked in that, when that going inside to evaluate becomes a fixed pattern in your life, you have to ask, is there something that happened pragmatically in my human interactions that caused me to get locked here? And quite often you'll find the answer is yes. I was reading an article the other day. What was the website? It was something like stilldrinking.com. It was a random Facebook link to a guy who actually writes some interesting essays. And he was writing an essay about what he called the author's delusion. Or, as I would put it, the writer's delusion. Because an author is someone who has created something, the author of a work. A writer is somebody who writes for a living. So the writer's delusion, the artist's delusion, or the human delusion. And his way of saying this was to say that in order to remain motivated and creative, you have to kind of trick yourself into believing that what you are creating is something that is desired. So this artist's delusion, or this human delusion, is essentially something that we don't want to be delusional. It is the desire for relevance to other human beings. And when we lose our relevance to other human beings, or when other human beings make us feel irrelevant, or when life circumstances not rooted in a specific other individual make us feel irrelevant or useless, or like our life has no meaning, this is what causes that next inward turning phase, that retraction of the soul. All of a sudden you want to stay there. Because with happy interactions, when all of your interactions are positive and life-affirming, you want to get back into that expansion phase. You crave connection. Human beings naturally crave affection and connection. And yet when the connection hurts, that's where you get locked into these phases of depression. It can be hurt from a criticism, it can be hurt from a disappointment, it can be hurt because something disappeared out of your life, it can be hurt because something that was a cherished treasure of yours was just crapped on. Whatever it is. It can be physical illness as well. There's nothing wrong with a natural interning, but when you get locked there, you have to look at not only what caused it, but how to get out of it. Getting out of it is the key. Getting out of this locked, tight energy and expanding again. That's the key. Best thing is to have another human being help you trigger that expansion. And yet oftentimes, even the most well-meaning friends and relatives can't do it. They try in one way, shape, or form, but a pattern of interaction that's been established year after year in that period of contracted energy has a sameness to it. It's not shaking anything up. There's a sameness to it that in a deeper depression isn't enough to shake you out of it. Interaction with new people is an amazing way to break out of depressions. But it can be challenging because when you're locked into this tight space, you go to interact with new people and you're not forming the connection well, and maybe they're not reaching out to you because, what's their obligation to reach out to you if you're in a sometimes the first change has to start within if you don't have someone who's just ready to part the veils for you and draw you back out into the world. What kind of changes can you make? You could start with things like new hairstyle, a new shave, new clothes. Those are all a little superficial, but even superficial changes, they're changing energy patterns, okay? The thing about depression is it's a desire to maintain a closed, static, unchanging energy pattern. It becomes stagnant from fear of that which is external. So changing superficial things in your immediate surroundings, new decor could be new curtains, new bed sheets, new clothes, whatever. Those little tiny changes start shaking up that stagnation a little bit. Be picking up a new book, new movie, just breaking the stagnation a little bit. Going out and trying to meet new people, breaking the stagnation a little more and a little more and a little more. Now, a lot of times, so when you're in this place, we have a tendency to look to the past. We want to relive the past. End up watching movies from our childhood with a pint of ice cream and a glass of wine. And there's nothing wrong with that on occasion. Again, when it's part of a natural expansion and contraction, that contraction that causes that introversion and looking back is not a negative thing as long as it's part of a healthy ebb and flow. It's when you become locked into it that going back and reliving your past, constantly thinking about things that have happened to you in the past, offenses that have been committed against you in the past, failures you've experienced in the past, is all part of staying locked into a stagnant pattern of behavior. And when you're in this stagnant pattern of behavior, constantly reevaluating the past, further evaluation and reliving of the past is nothing but keeping that stagnant energy on lockdown. You have to do new. You have to take a risk. You have to do something that's totally outside of your comfort zone. Find a friend to go out of your comfort zone with. Make a new friend to go out of your comfort zone with. Reach out for help if you're in a deep enough depression that you need to. Do something different. It's all about getting the wheels moving and keeping them turning until all the rust and chunky mud and grease has time to really break off, It's easy to get false starts and then you stop again, then start again and start again and keep pushing until you get that nice clean rolling down the road. And eventually you'll pull over again. Expansion and contraction. Just don't stay contracted so long that the gears rust themselves into uselessness. And with that, my friends, I bid thee health, happiness, joy, enthusiasm, and all the other good things in this world. Blessed be.